Why do overthinkers suffer so much? It's a question that many of us ask ourselves in quiet moments, when our minds are racing, caught in the web of doubt and fear. Let me tell you something, overthinking is a silent enemy, one that often doesn't show its face until it's too late. And once it takes hold, it doesn't let go easily. There's a battle that many of us fight day in and day out that no one can see. It's the struggle that occurs within our minds, behind the closed doors of our thoughts. It's silent, but it's powerful. It's a fight with ourselves, a war we can't always escape. It's the silent struggle of overthinking. We often don't realize how much it affects us until it becomes too much to bear, until it drains us of our energy, our confidence, and our peace of mind. Overthinking isn't just about excessive thoughts, it's about the quality of those thoughts. It's the constant replaying of scenarios in our minds, asking, what if, over and over again? It's the never-ending analysis of every possible outcome, every decision, every conversation. It's the feeling of never truly being present because your mind is always somewhere else, either trapped in the past or projecting into the future. It's like living in a fog where clarity and calm are distant dreams. But overthinking doesn't just affect us mentally, it affects us physically too. It's the weight that you carry on your shoulders, the tightness in your chest, the racing heartbeat. It's the sleepless nights spent tossing and turning, replaying everything you've said and done, wondering if you could have done it better. It's the exhaustion that comes from carrying all that mental baggage, from constantly worrying about things beyond your control. And yet we keep going because we think we have to, because we think it's the only way to avoid making mistakes or failing. In this silent struggle, we often find ourselves questioning our decisions, doubting our abilities, and fearing the consequences of making the wrong choice. The desire to get everything right, to be perfect, can become paralyzing. The fear of failure becomes louder than the voice that tells us to just move forward. And so we stay stuck, not realizing that in trying to avoid mistakes, we end up making none at all. But in that stagnation, we miss out on growth, progress, and the possibility of something greater. It's easy to think that overthinking is just a minor issue, something we can control at any time. But when it becomes a daily part of your life, it slowly erodes your mental and emotional well-being. It's like a slow burn, something that chips away at your confidence and your ability to take action. And even though we're surrounded by people who love us and support us, this struggle is ours to face alone. The thoughts, the worries, the doubts, they are all within us. No one can see them, and often we don't even talk about them because we're afraid of being misunderstood or judged. And yet, overthinking is something we all experience in one way or another. It's a shared burden, one that connects us all, even though we wear different faces. We think we're alone in this, that our minds are the only ones holding us hostage. But the truth is, we're all battling that same silent struggle. And though we may not see it, there's a collective fight happening in the hearts and minds of millions. Uncertainty is one of the most powerful forces that can hold us back in life. It's the fear of not knowing what lies ahead, the fear of stepping into the unknown. It creeps into our thoughts and starts to take control, making us question our choices, our direction, and even our worth. This fear often feels like a weight that we carry on our shoulders, an invisible barrier that stops us from moving forward, even when we know deep down that we should. The fear of uncertainty is not just about not knowing what's coming next. It's about the feeling of losing control. It's about the fear of not having a roadmap, not having every step laid out in front of us. We are wired to seek safety, to feel secure in what we know. And when that sense of security is threatened, our minds go into overdrive. We begin to imagine worst-case scenarios, convince ourselves that things will go wrong, and allow those negative thoughts to spiral until they become our reality. This fear doesn't just affect our decisions, it can paralyze us completely, preventing us from taking risks or making any moves at all. We often mistake certainty for safety. We believe that knowing what will happen next gives us control over our lives, but in reality, life is never fully predictable. There will always be factors beyond our control, unexpected challenges and twists in the road that we can't anticipate. Yet, we keep searching for that comfort zone, that place where we feel safe from the unknown. The problem with this mindset is that it keeps us stuck. It keeps us from reaching our potential because we are too afraid to step out and try something different. The fear of uncertainty often manifests itself in our desire for perfection. We think that if we can plan every detail, anticipate every problem, and eliminate every possibility of failure, we will be safe. But that is an illusion. No matter how much we prepare, life will always find a way to surprise us. And when we are so focused on controlling every aspect of our lives, we miss the opportunity to embrace growth, to embrace change. The best things in life often come from the unexpected, from the moments we didn't plan for, from the experiences that challenge us to grow beyond our limitations. This fear can also be tied to our sense of self-worth. We tie our value to our ability to control outcomes, to predict what will happen, and to avoid failure at all costs. But in doing so, we forget that our true value comes from our ability to adapt, to learn from mistakes, and to move forward regardless of the outcome. The fear of uncertainty makes us think that not having all the answers means we're unprepared or worse, inadequate. It makes us forget that uncertainty is part of the journey, part of the process of becoming who we're meant to be. Every decision we make, every step we take into the unknown is a leap of faith. We can't control everything, and that's okay. The real growth comes from learning how to navigate the unknown, how to handle the challenges that arise, and how to trust ourselves even when the path ahead is unclear. But the fear of uncertainty keeps us from taking that first step. It keeps us waiting, wondering, doubting. And the longer we wait, the more opportunities we miss, the more life passes us by. What makes this fear even more powerful is how it feeds into our insecurities. When we're uncertain about something, it's easy to start questioning our abilities. We wonder if we're good enough, smart enough, strong enough to handle what's coming. We let self-doubt creep in, and before we know it, we've convinced ourselves that we're not capable of dealing with whatever challenges the future might bring. But this self-doubt is a lie. It's the fear of uncertainty speaking, telling us that we're not enough, that we need to know everything before we act. The truth is, you are enough, even when the future is unclear, even when you don't have all the answers. Living with the fear of uncertainty can keep us stuck in a place where we never take action, never make decisions, and never move forward. We may stay in jobs we hate, relationships that drain us, or situations that no longer serve us, simply because we're afraid of the unknown. But the truth is, staying in those situations only deepens our fear. It traps us in a cycle of comfort that is anything but fulfilling. It keeps us from stepping into the life we truly want, the life that's waiting for us on the other side of fear. Perfectionism is often seen as a desirable trait, something that we strive for in our work, our relationships, and even within ourselves. We hear people say, strive for perfection, or do it right, or don't do it at all. But what they don't often tell us is the hidden cost of perfectionism, the toll it takes on our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Perfectionism isn't just about wanting to do things well, it's about the relentless pursuit of an ideal that doesn't truly exist, and in doing so, it becomes a heavy burden to carry. At its core, perfectionism is driven by a fear of failure and the need for control. The desire to do everything flawlessly comes from a belief that any imperfection is unacceptable, that we must present a version of ourselves that is always polished and flawless. But this is an unrealistic standard. No one is perfect, and the pursuit of perfection only sets us up for disappointment and self-criticism. When we fall short of these unattainable ideals, we internalize the failure, blaming ourselves and spiraling into feelings of inadequacy. The burden of perfectionism is often invisible to others, but it's deeply felt by those who live with it. It shows up in the constant pressure to do better, to be better, to prove ourselves to others, or even to prove it to ourselves. It manifests in the inability to celebrate our successes because they never feel good enough, in the constant second guessing of decisions, and in the fear of making mistakes. This pressure to be perfect keeps us trapped in a cycle of striving for something that, at its best, is elusive, and at its worst, destructive. Perfectionism also erodes our sense of satisfaction and happiness. When we're focused solely on achieving perfection, We lose sight of the process, the joy that comes from learning, growing, and even failing. Instead of embracing mistakes as opportunities to improve, we view them as personal shortcomings, as evidence that we're not good enough. This mindset not only diminishes our self-esteem, but also prevents us from enjoying the present moment. We're always looking for what's next, what's better, what's more perfect, leaving us unable to fully appreciate what we have already accomplished. This constant striving for perfection can also affect our relationships. The pressure to be perfect spills over into how we interact with others. We may put on a facade of having it all together, afraid to show vulnerability or imperfections. We might avoid asking for help, believing that needing assistance is a sign of weakness or failure. We project an image of perfection, hoping others will see us as capable and competent. But this only isolates us from those who could offer support and understanding. The burden of perfectionism is carried alone, and it often leads to feelings of loneliness and disconnection. The physical toll of perfectionism is just as real. The constant mental and emotional strain of striving for an impossible ideal leads to stress, anxiety, and burnout. Over time, this pressure manifests in physical symptoms, headaches, sleepless nights, muscle tension, and even digestive issues. Our bodies respond to the stress of perfectionism by signaling that something is wrong, but we often ignore these signs, pushing ourselves harder and further in the pursuit of an elusive ideal. The burden becomes heavier, and eventually can feel like we are carrying a weight we can't shed. What's often not acknowledged is how perfectionism is rooted in our fear of judgment. We worry about how others perceive us, and as a result, hold ourselves to standards that are far beyond what anyone could reasonably expect. We imagine that if we are perfect, we will be accepted, loved, or admired. But this kind of thinking is flawed because no one is perfect, and no one can meet the high standards of perfectionism all the time. The fear of judgment keeps us on a treadmill of constant effort. And the truth is, most people are too concerned with their own struggles to judge us as harshly as we fear. The burden of perfectionism is not only in the striving for flawlessness, but also in the guilt that follows when we fall short. We don't allow ourselves to experience the grace of imperfection. Instead, we punish ourselves for every misstep, every small failure, and we hold ourselves back from taking risks, from stepping out of our comfort zones for fear of not being able to do things perfectly. This cycle of self-punishment prevents us from growing and learning from our experiences. Instead of celebrating our efforts, we're stuck in a loop of dissatisfaction, constantly trying to measure up to a standard that doesn't serve us. At the heart of perfectionism is a deep insecurity, a fear that who we are as we are isn't enough. We believe that perfection is the only way to prove our worth, to show that we are capable, valuable, and deserving. But in reality, this pursuit robs us of the very things that make us human, our imperfections, our mistakes, and our ability to learn and grow from them. The burden of perfectionism is not just about striving for the best, it's about believing that without perfection, we are not worthy of love, respect, or success. Mental health is something we often overlook or underestimate until it begins to show signs of struggle. One of the most subtle yet profound impacts on our mental health comes from the daily pressures and expectations we place on ourselves. These pressures often stem from a variety of sources: society, work, relationships, and even our internal drive for success. But what many people don't realize is how these pressures, when unchecked, can have a devastating effect on our mental well-being. Over time, the strain of trying to keep up with everything, meet impossible standards, and avoid failure can erode our mental health in ways we don't immediately see. The pressure to constantly perform, to be at our best every day, and to present a perfect image of ourselves can lead to a host of mental health issues. Anxiety, for instance, is a common consequence of these unrealistic expectations. The constant worry about meeting those standards, whether at work, in social settings, or in our personal lives, creates a cycle of stress. We start to feel that no matter what we do, it's never enough. Anxiety can manifest itself in physical ways such as restlessness, insomnia, racing thoughts, and a constant feeling of being on edge. The mind becomes consumed by the idea of needing to be perfect, and the pressure becomes unbearable. Depression is another heavy toll that this constant pressure can have on mental health. When we feel like we're not living up to our own or society's expectations, it can cause feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness. This sense of inadequacy grows when we compare ourselves to others, believing that everyone else has it all together while we struggle. It becomes easy to spiral into a negative thought pattern where we begin to question our value, our abilities, and our place in the world. When perfection becomes the goal, anything short of it feels like failure, and failure often triggers a depressive mindset. The gap between where we think we should be and where we actually are becomes an emotional chasm, difficult to bridge and even harder to ignore. Another significant mental health impact of constantly striving for perfection is burnout. We push ourselves beyond our limits, working long hours, overcommitting to responsibilities, and sacrificing self-care in the name of achievement. Over time, this relentless effort without proper rest or balance takes a toll on the mind. Burnout isn't just about being physically exhausted, it's a deep emotional and mental drain. It leaves us feeling depleted, disconnected, and indifferent toward things we once cared about. This exhaustion can make it difficult to find motivation or joy in anything. And the longer we ignore the signs, the more difficult it becomes to recover. The weight of unmet expectations can make us feel like we're constantly running a race without ever reaching the finish line. The quest for perfection can also lead to a lack of self-compassion. When we demand perfection from ourselves, we often fail to give ourselves the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a friend or loved one. We are our harshest critics, focusing only on our shortcomings and never allowing ourselves room for mistakes or growth. This lack of self-compassion leads to a negative self-image where we view ourselves through a lens of criticism and judgment. Instead of nurturing our mental health by acknowledging our efforts and progress, we focus on our perceived failures, reinforcing feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. The fear of judgment plays a significant role in the mental health impacts of perfectionism. We are often afraid of how others will perceive us, especially in social or professional settings. This fear of judgment leads to constant self-monitoring and anxiety about making mistakes in front of others. Social anxiety, in particular, is closely tied to the desire for perfection. The idea of being exposed or vulnerable, of not meeting expectations, can make social interactions feel like a minefield. Over time, this fear can lead to isolation as we avoid situations where we feel we could be judged or criticized. The pressure to maintain a perfect image makes it difficult to be authentic and leads to a sense of disconnection from others. Perfectionism and its impact on mental health are also intertwined with a loss of personal identity. When we define ourselves by our achievements, successes, and the approval of others, we lose sight of who we truly are. We become so consumed with meeting external expectations that we forget to nurture the parts of ourselves that make us unique and valuable outside of what we do. This disconnection from our true selves can leave us feeling lost or unfulfilled, no matter how many accomplishments we collect. The pressure to be perfect overshadows the need to be authentic, and this creates an internal struggle that can lead to deep dissatisfaction. Moreover, the constant striving for perfection prevents us from experiencing the full range of human emotions. We become so focused on avoiding failure and imperfection that we deny ourselves the opportunity to grow from our mistakes. Emotions like frustration, sadness, and vulnerability are often seen as signs of weakness in a perfectionist mindset, leading us to suppress or hide them. This suppression of emotions can lead to emotional numbing, where we become disconnected from our feelings altogether. When we can't experience or express our emotions fully, it diminishes our emotional intelligence and makes it harder to cope with stress, anxiety, or other challenges that come our way. Lastly, the impact on mental health from the pursuit of perfection extends to the way we see and relate to others. Because perfectionism often involves comparison, whether we're comparing our achievements to those of others or measuring ourselves against an idealized version of success, we begin to view relationships through a lens of competition rather than connection. We might feel jealous, envious, or resentful when others achieve what we want or when they seem to have it easier than we do. This comparison can damage relationships, leading to feelings of alienation or bitterness. The constant need to be perfect keeps us in a state of isolation, preventing us from forming deeper, more meaningful connections with others. The impact of perfectionism on mental health is deep, far-reaching, and often hidden beneath the surface. It's a burden that weighs heavily on the mind, creating cycles of stress, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion. In today's world, we are overwhelmed with choices. Everywhere we look, there are options, endless options available to us. Whether it's choosing a meal, a career path, a place to live, or even the simplest task of selecting a product from a store shelf, we are faced with a multitude of decisions every day. At first glance, it seems like having more options is a good thing. The more choices we have, the better, right? We believe that more options give us the power to find exactly what we want, to make the best decision. But in reality, this abundance of choice often leads to something completely unexpected: anxiety, confusion, and dissatisfaction. This is the paradox of choice. The paradox of choice is the idea that while we think more options will lead to greater happiness and fulfillment, it often has the opposite effect. When we are presented with a wide range of choices, the pressure to make the perfect choice becomes overwhelming. The more options we have, the more we begin to fear that we'll make the wrong choice, that we'll miss out on something better, or that we'll regret the decision we make. This fear of making a mistake leads to analysis paralysis and inability to make a decision at all because we're too focused on weighing all the possible alternatives. The more choices we have, the harder it becomes to make a decision, and in the process, we lose the sense of freedom we once thought came with having options. The sheer number of choices can lead to a constant feeling of uncertainty. When there are too many options, we become less confident in our ability to choose correctly. We start second-guessing ourselves, wondering if there is a better option we haven't considered or if we've overlooked a choice that might have been more fulfilling. This uncertainty can be draining, and it leaves us questioning our own judgment. We end up spending more time and energy deliberating over our choices than actually enjoying the outcome of the decision we eventually make. Another aspect of the paradox of choice is the tendency to compare our choices with others. When we have more options, we become more aware of what others are choosing and feel the pressure to make decisions that align with what is considered best or successful by societal standards. This comparison leads to dissatisfaction because no matter what we choose, we wonder if someone else made a better choice. We start looking at what others have and feel like we're missing out, even if the option we chose was perfectly fine. The constant comparison erodes our sense of satisfaction and diminishes our ability to appreciate our own decisions. This phenomenon also affects our ability to be content with what we have. When we have a limited number of choices, we are more likely to accept what we have, to make the most of it, and to find satisfaction in it. But with an abundance of choices, there is always the nagging thought in the back of our minds: could there be something better? This desire for something better keeps us from fully enjoying what we have, and it makes us perpetually restless. The more choices we have, the more likely we are to focus on what we might be missing out on rather than appreciating what we already have. The paradox of choice also ties into our expectations. When we have more options, we expect that we will find the one that is perfect for us. We believe that with so many choices available, there is a right decision to be made, and we expect to feel perfectly satisfied once we make it. But in reality, no choice is ever perfect. There will always be trade-offs. And once we make our decision, we begin to wonder if the other options might have been better. This creates a sense of dissatisfaction, no matter how good our choice may have been. Our expectations become inflated, and no matter what we choose, we are left feeling that something is missing or that we could have made a better choice. This overload of choices also contributes to our ability to commit. When we are faced with an abundance of options, we struggle to commit to one because we know there are so many alternatives out there. This lack of commitment can affect many areas of our lives, from relationships to careers to simple day-to-day decisions. We hesitate to make choices. And even when we do, we are often distracted by the thought of other, potentially better options. The constant availability of alternatives keeps us in a state of indecision, and we miss out on the benefits that come with making a decision and sticking with it. In many cases, the paradox of choice leads to decision fatigue. The more decisions we make, the more our mental energy is drained. This is especially true in a world where we are bombarded with choices all day long. From picking what to wear in the morning to deciding what to eat for lunch, every decision takes a toll on our mental state. By the time we face the big decisions like career choices, relationships, or major life changes, we are often mentally exhausted and incapable of making thoughtful, well-considered choices. The overwhelming number of choices we face on a daily basis leads to decision fatigue. And in the end, it becomes harder to make good decisions at all. Trust is the foundation of any healthy relationship, whether with others or with ourselves. When we lack trust in ourselves, we create a barrier that holds us back from reaching our full potential. Self-trust is the belief that we are capable, that we can make decisions that align with our values, and that we have the ability to handle whatever life throws our way. It's the confidence to take risks, face challenges, and make mistakes without losing sight of our worth. But when that trust is eroded, it leaves us questioning our abilities, doubting our judgment, and constantly second-guessing our choices. This lack of self-trust is one of the most paralyzing struggles we can face, and it affects every aspect of our lives. Aspects of a lack of self-trust is the way it undermines our ability to take risks. Life is full of uncertainty, and success often requires stepping into the unknown, taking risks, and embracing challenges. But when we don't trust ourselves, we shy away from risks. We avoid situations where there's potential for failure because the fear of making a mistake feels too overwhelming. We prefer the safety of inaction to the uncertainty of taking a leap. This lack of trust in our own abilities holds us back from exploring new opportunities, from reaching for goals that feel out of reach, and from growing into the people we're capable of becoming. Without risk, there is no growth, and without growth, there is no progress. A lack of trust in oneself also leads to the constant need for external validation. When we don't trust ourselves, we rely heavily on the opinions of others to guide our decisions. We seek approval from friends, family, colleagues, or even strangers to confirm that we're making the right choices. This dependency on others can become all-consuming, leaving us feeling lost when we don't receive the validation we're seeking. The problem is that external validation is fleeting. It's based on other people's opinions and is often unreliable. When we place our worth in the hands of others, we give up control of our own lives. The approval we seek may never come, or it may come in ways that don't truly satisfy us. Ultimately, this reinforces the feeling that we can't trust ourselves to make the right decisions, and we continue to rely on others to fill that void. The lack of self-trust also breeds self-criticism. When we don't trust ourselves, we become our harshest critics. Every mistake, every misstep is magnified, and we convince ourselves that we're failures. We focus on our flaws and weaknesses, believing that we are incapable of achieving anything great. This constant internal dialogue of self-criticism can be debilitating, creating a mental environment of negativity and self-doubt. We begin to believe that we're not good enough, that we don't have the skills or intelligence to succeed, and that we're destined for failure. This self-criticism becomes a cycle, one that reinforces our lack of self-trust and makes it harder to break free from it. The more we beat ourselves up, the less likely we are to take positive action, and the deeper the cycle of self-doubt becomes. The lack of trust in oneself can also lead to a fear of failure. When we don't trust our abilities, failure feels like a catastrophe, something that confirms our worst fears about ourselves. But failure is a natural part of life. It's how we learn, how we grow, and how we improve. When we lack self-trust, we see failure as something to avoid at all costs, and this fear of failure keeps us from taking the necessary risk to achieve our goals. We become so focused on avoiding failure that we never give ourselves the opportunity to try. Ironically, it's this fear of failure that often leads to failure itself. By refusing to take action, we prevent ourselves from experiencing success, and we reinforce the belief that we can't trust ourselves to get things right. The inability to trust ourselves also affects our relationships with others. When we don't trust ourselves, we are often unable to trust others fully. We may constantly question people's intentions, doubting whether they have our best interests at heart. This lack of trust in ourselves extends to others, creating a barrier between us and the people we care about. We might struggle to let others in, afraid that we'll be let down or hurt. This creates distance in our relationships, preventing us from forming deep, meaningful connections. The lack of trust we have in ourselves creates a chain reaction, leading to distrust and insecurity in the relationships around us. We become closed off, afraid of being vulnerable or being hurt, and this keeps us from experiencing the love and connection that we all crave. The lack of trust in oneself is a silent force that holds us back from becoming the person we're meant to be. It shapes how we view ourselves, how we interact with the world, and how we approach challenges. It steals our confidence, our happiness, and our ability to fully embrace life. The road to rebuilding self-trust is not easy, but it is essential if we want to break free from the chains of doubt and fear. It requires courage, patience, and self-compassion, but ultimately, it's the key to unlocking the power within us to live the life we deserve. Letting go is one of the most powerful yet most difficult actions we can take in life. It's not simply about releasing things, it's about releasing the hold that these things have on us. Whether it's a toxic relationship, a past mistake, an unfulfilled dream, or the weight of our own fears and doubts, the act of letting go requires deep courage and self-awareness. It's a process that forces us to face our attachments and acknowledge the things we have clung to, even when they no longer serve us. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or erasing, rather, it means freeing ourselves from the mental and emotional chains that keep us anchored in a place we no longer belong. One of the greatest struggles of letting go is the fear of what lies beyond it. We fear the unknown, the space that opens up when we release something that has been a part of our lives for so long. The comfort of familiarity, even when it is toxic or limiting, keeps us from taking that first step toward freedom. Letting go feels like stepping into a void, a place of uncertainty where we can't see the outcome. But the truth is that void is not emptiness, it is full of potential. The space created by letting go allows new opportunities, new people, and new experiences to enter our lives. We cannot welcome the new until we make room for it by releasing what no longer aligns with our growth. Letting go also involves shedding the burden of the past. Our memories, whether good or bad, are powerful forces that shape how we view ourselves and the world around us. Often we hold on to past mistakes, regrets, and disappointments, letting them define our future decisions and interactions. We think that holding on to these memories will somehow protect us from repeating the same mistakes or will keep us tethered to something familiar. But the more we hold on to these old stories, the more we are held captive by them. Letting go of the past is not about erasing the experiences that have shaped us. It's about reframing those experiences, seeing them for what they truly are, lessons. By releasing the negative emotional charge that attaches to our memories, we free ourselves to create new experiences that are not dictated by what happened before. When we let go, we also free ourselves from the need to control everything. Control is an illusion, and the more we try to control the uncontrollable, the more stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed we become. We spend so much energy trying to control outcomes, people, and situations, only to realize that most things are beyond our influence. Letting go means surrendering the need to micromanage every aspect of our lives. It's a shift from a mindset of fear and resistance to one of trust and acceptance. Letting go allows us to acknowledge that we cannot control everything. And in doing so, we stop fighting against the flow of life. We learn to embrace the unpredictability, finding peace in the uncertainty that comes with releasing the need for absolute control. At its core, letting go is an act of self-compassion. When we hold on to negative thoughts, self-doubt, guilt, or anger, we are essentially punishing ourselves. We allow these emotions and thoughts to take up space in our minds, stealing our energy and preventing us from moving forward. Letting go means choosing to free ourselves from the emotional weight that we carry. It's about recognizing that we deserve peace, happiness, and freedom from the pain that we hold on to. We let go not for others, but for ourselves to reclaim our mental and emotional well-being. By doing so, we open ourselves to greater healing and growth. We release the need to remain stuck in the past, choosing instead to embrace the present and the possibilities it holds. Another powerful aspect of letting go is the way it deepens our connection to the present moment. So much of our suffering comes from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. We often carry the baggage of yesterday or stress about what's coming tomorrow, which makes it impossible to fully experience the here and now. Letting go helps us shift our focus to the present moment where real living happens. By releasing the weight of the past and the anxiety about the future, we can experience life as it unfolds. We can engage with the people in our lives, pursue our passions, and take risks without being anchored to what has been or what might come. The power of letting go lies in its ability to ground us in the present, where true freedom and joy reside. Letting go also helps us shift our mindset from scarcity to abundance. Often we hold on to things out of fear that we won't have enough, fear that we will lose something important, or fear that we won't find something better. This mindset of scarcity keeps us stuck, holding on to things that no longer serve us because we are afraid of letting go. But the reality is that the more we release, the more we make space for abundance. Letting go isn't about losing, it's about gaining the freedom to welcome new opportunities, new experiences, and new growth. When we open our hands, we allow life to give us something greater than what we held on to in the past. Letting go enables us to see that the universe and all its infinite possibilities has far more to offer than we can imagine. The act of letting go is often a deeply transformative experience. It requires vulnerability, courage, and the willingness to face discomfort. It can be painful to let go of something that has been a part of us for so long, whether it's a person, a belief, a habit, or an ideal. But it is through this process of releasing that we make room for transformation. We let go of the old in order to step into the new, evolving into the person we are meant to become. Letting go is a reminder that we are not defined by what we've held on to, but by what we choose to release in order to grow. It's a powerful reminder that we have the ability to shape our own lives and that we are worthy of the freedom that comes with letting go. Letting go is not an easy task, but it is one of the most liberating actions we can take in our lives. It requires strength, vulnerability, and an unwavering belief that we deserve to move forward. By releasing what no longer serves us, whether it's old fears, regrets, or attachments, we make room for growth, healing, and new possibilities. The power of letting go lies not in forgetting the past, but in choosing not to let it control our present and future. It's about trusting ourselves enough to embrace the unknown, to step into the space that we've cleared, and to live fully in the now. When we let go, we open the door to our true potential, to the life we are meant to live.